Perhaps, like Mark Twain, you think Niagara Falls is where the Garden of Eden was located. Bible scholars consider places like the Arabian Peninsula, Armenia, Turkey, Egypt, Iraq, or Lebanon as places for the location of Eden. Genesis 2 gives us a detailed description of where Eden was located. Some scientists say there's no way we could find it today. The flood destroyed the earth, and the Bible confirms that. 2 Peter 3:6 says, and that the world which then was came to an end through the overflowing of the waters. So there's no doubting the destruction of the global flood. But the person writing the location of Eden referred to countries that didn't exist until after the flood, like Assyria, like Cush, like Havilah. The same scientists say that the names for the modern rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, are copies of the original names that existed before the flood. And so the rivers that we see today and we identify as the Tigris and Euphrates are not the same rivers in Genesis 2. Now, it is true, there's fossil sediment 2 miles deep covering those regions, and the rivers flow over it. And it seems that they are rivers that formed after the flood. But the writer of Genesis, who was Moses, used Assyria to locate the Tigris River of Eden. And Assyria was a place at the time that Moses wrote Genesis. So are we to believe it is just a coincidence that another Assyria was west of another Tigris, near another Euphrates, near another Havilah? It kind of seems like Moses wanted us to know where Eden once was, doesn't it? Havilah is described in the same book, Genesis, by the same writer, Moses, as being in the region that we call Arabia. And it was the home of the Ishmaelites. And it was also the home of the Amalekites and other Arabian tribes. Genesis 25 and 1 Samuel 15 say it was a region between Egypt and Assyria. And that's Saudi Arabia and Kuwait today. Now, also, Genesis says that there was a river that flowed through Havilah, and that was the Pishon River, and it joined with the Tigris and Euphrates. Dr. Farouk El-Baz, a NASA scientist and geologist, studied the satellite images from 1994, and he discovered an ancient riverbed that ran all the way through Saudi Arabia to Kuwait. And El-Baz named it the Kuwait River. And he could see that this shadow, because it doesn't exist today, really, it looks just like a shadow in the pictures of this ancient riverbed that in places it was covered over with sand, but you could see how it came out from the other end of the sand. And El-Baz knew that it was one big river that flowed all the way through Saudi Arabia. Now, the locals called it, they called it Wadi al-Batin and Wadi al-Rumah. And the main river branched off twice, once to the northwest at Wadi Qad, and second to the southwest at Wadi Jadir. And it flows and that second part, the southwest part, Wadi Jadir, flows near the gold mines at Mada Dahab. And this is interesting that according to James Sauer, there is climatic and archaeological evidence that this river, this ancient riverbed, would have dried up between 3000 to 2000 BC. And so it seems that this ancient river that went all the way through Saudi Arabia, all the way to Kuwait, to the Persian Gulf, it seems to be a good candidate for the Pishon River of Eden. Another river in Eden was the Gihon, and the Bible put it in the land of Cush. And this led scholars to say it had to be in Nubia and Sudan because people living there were called Cushites. But in Genesis 10, 7 and 8, the sons of Cush are listed, and most of them are identified with regions in Arabia. Some of their territories reached all the way to the Persian Gulf. Now, one of Cush's descendants listed was Nimrod, whom the Bible puts specifically in southern Iraq. And other references to this eastern Cush are in Isaiah 11:11, Isaiah 45:15, and also in Ezekiel 38:5. So if your Bible says Ethiopia, then your notes should say Cush. And so while the Bible puts the Cushites in Sudan and Nubia, a place that we would identify as Ethiopia, it also says that Cush's descendants settled in Arabia and Iraq too. The conclusion is that the land of Cush had two locations, one being near the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now, modern scholars say that this eastern land of Cush was ancient Kuz in the region that is today modern Khuzestan, and that's in southwest Iran. And that means that the Gihon River of Eden might have been the Karun River that's there today. Now, this information and more is in our book on Sumer, and if you'd like to read it, I've linked it in the description box below. Another consideration is that the description in Genesis seems to say that Eden was the starting point of the rivers, the head, Rosh. This means that in our understanding, what we would describe it today, this would mean that the rivers met in the south and they flowed north. Now, the Tigris and the Euphrates and the Karun rivers, they do meet, but they do not flow north. It's just the opposite. They empty into the Persian Gulf to the south. And still, many reliable scholars are willing to say that Eden was in the region, even though it no longer exists today. And some of them wonder if it lies deep under the Persian Gulf. And there's one last note. Remember the scientists who believe that the description of Eden's location in Genesis was not meant to tell us a region that we might be able to point to today? And they said that there's no way we could know where Eden was, that the earth was completely changed after the flood. And that's true. The earth was changed. But when they're asked if Eden could have been in Iraq, they say no, because the earth looks completely different. But I'm just wondering, if we can't say where it was, can we say for sure where it wasn't? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Was Moses using landmarks that the Israelites would understand, or was he writing about a place he had no idea of its location? Scholars will probably be debating that for eons. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a blessed day.